the Borsterk podcast. The trade of the millennium. Luka Doncic is on his way to Los Angeles.
Man, it's I have not been this shocked as in my time, I think, as an NBA fan, as a sports fan. I think it's the most shocking trade of all time. We can probably go through the history and see what else even compares, but a 25-year-old top 3 or 4 player in the league at worst, entering his prime, being traded just doesn't happen, especially without him demanding it, which it seems like he didn't demand it. I'm at a loss. Drew, you were able to break the news to
Yeah,
me when
yeah.
I was at a friend's birthday party yesterday, and my phone was going off in my pocket, but I wanted to be social and not check it mid-conversation with people I hadn't seen in a while. And Drew FaceTimes me, and
That's when you know.
that's when I knew.
I'm sure no one has given up on blowing up Woj's phone on a night like that, even months into his St. Bonaventure job. Zach Lowe's not in the picture. So, like, the pillars of these moments are kind of on the outskirts of NBA society right now. I was watching Suns Blazers with my dad, and the guy starts murmuring something, and I hear Luka's name. And then he speaks up and he says, "It looks like Luka Doncic is going to the Lakers in exchange for Anthony Davis and other stuff." And I was looking down at my phone for a second. My dad says, "Did you hear what they just said?" But then the guys on the broadcast start laughing and say, "No, come on. Social media is crazy. It must be one of those fake accounts my son tells me about, those Centels." And they're laughing and they're like, "Yeah, there's no way. There's no way. Let's get back to this Blazers game." 6 out of 7 wins for the Blazers, by the way. So there was a lot of good stuff to talk about. Like 20 seconds later, I think is when Bobby Marks or ESPN like tweets it and says it's real. And Sham says I haven't been hacked. And all of a sudden, I'm just paralyzed. I take like a couple minutes to make sure that I'm not having a stroke. And then I call you. And I still cannot believe any of this is real. It still makes no sense to me because we've seen Luka heavier than he should be drag a team to 2 conference finals in 4 years, one of those being a finals. And there have been these bullshit sort of like not Centel, but NBA Central tweets over the last year or so. You know, KOC mentioned it last summer that the Lakers are interested in Luka Doncic, just like every single basketball team on the face of the earth. And you just kind of roll your eyes and say, yeah, you know, there could come a time down the road when Luka's toward the end of his contract or Luka gets his first chance at free agency that something like that becomes a real circus. And of course, the Lakers are always in the mix for someone as special as Luka.
Yeah.
But the Mavs were fine. The Mavs
They just
just
made the
got
finals.
the Mavs just got to the finals. And I still have friends who've been telling me this year that they're going with Dallas in a Thunder series just because it's Luka, and Luka owned them last year, and Luka played better than Shea. And like a lot of smart people will still tell you like Luka's above Shea just because he's done it. And like we've got to see Shea do it in the playoffs before we can put Shea 2 or 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's just it blew my mind. And then you take a step back and you're like, okay, so like surely we're not smarter than Nico Harrison. Like Nico Harrison has been doing this for decades, and we've got to think more deeply, you know, about their thought process. And so I've been trying to do that. I've been trying to immerse myself in the Dallas psyche, and I got to be honest, it's not really taking me anywhere that productive.
Yeah. There's no zag here. Like, if you try to look for a zag, I don't think there is one here. You know, it's telling that everyone's first reaction, bar none, was, oh, Shams was hacked. Like, that was the
Yeah.
first reaction that everyone had. I've gone back and, like, there's a number of pods that I listened to that were doing live pods as this news was
Yeah.
breaking, like
Oh
Nick's
no.
post-game show.
Yeah.
And every single one of them is like, no, that's not real. Like, let's not spend any time on that. And then it gradually dawns on them that, wait, oh, it's in the same way it dawned on us. Like, oh, he
Yeah.
actually followed it up with a tweet that says he wasn't hacked. Oh, Chris Haynes tweeted it out
Yeah.
too.
But like, dude, it's like if you're gonna hack Shams's Twitter, at least trade Luca for Giannis. Like, make it something believable, you know, something that we still won't believe. But like, makes sense even in like a crazy theoretical, like both guys hate their team situation and the value isn't that different.
Yeah.
But
That's
it's
the thing because my brother texted me this Frank Isola tweet, and Frank Isola's not. I guess he's still got it. He's still got his fastball. He said, if you're trading a player as talented and accomplished as Luka, like, wouldn't you call every team in the league and ask for their best player first? Like, why did you go straight to Anthony Davis? Maybe you could have gotten Jason Tatum for Luka. Maybe you could have gotten, I don't know, Jalen Brunson. Like, you could have gotten him back. We'll get to that history of Mavericks having
yeah.
franchise players slip through their fingertips, but uh,
Yeah. So here let's just look at this for a second. Like the recent super trades, the massive pick packages and Hall of Famers on the move. The Clippers for Paul George, albeit, like I mentioned, the Kawhi circumstances, it's a little different. They got SGA, Danilo Gallinari, 5 first rounders, and 2 swaps. The Timberwolves got Rudy Gobert and they gave the Jazz. I mean, the players don't matter, but actually they kind of, because Walker Kessler is pretty damn good now, but they gave them Kessler, Vanderbilt, a couple other players, and 4 first round picks and a swap. 4 picks and a swap, and Kessler was really the significant haul for Rudy Gobert. Donovan Mitchell, the Jazz received Larry Markkinen, Sexton, 3 first round picks, 2 swaps.
yeah, and Markkinen was not as good as he is now at the time.
Yes. For KD, Brooklyn got Bridges, Cam Johnson, 4 first round picks, and a 2028 first round swap. Brooklyn for Bridges got Bojan Bogdanovic, 5 first round picks. So I'm just looking at those packages, understanding that Dallas is looking to compete now.
I just can't get over it. It's a team voluntarily opting out of the prime of someone who has the potential to be a top 20 to 30 player in NBA history, maybe even higher. Like, Luka is a guy who, if you just project like a normal median outcome for the rest of his career, is like what, Kevin Durant? Like, that's the level of player that we're talking about here. This isn't some, like, maybe he turns into a superstar or not. No, this guy's already a top 3 or 4 player in the NBA. He's 25. He's probably going to age well because he's already good, even though he's out of shape. And and you pissed him off, which is a factor I thought Simmons identified well, of like, oh, what's it going to look like? I mean, every Mavs Lakers game from now on is going to be must see TV, especially if Mark Cuban is not in charge of basketball ops anymore. But if he's sitting behind the bench, you just know every single 3 Luka hits, he's just going to be staring at him. I need a live cam on Mark Cuban right now too to know what he thinks of all this, because he tweeted many years ago that, like, if it was between divorcing his wife and keeping Luka on the Mavs, you'd see him in divorce court. So, but he's not in charge of basketball ops anymore. But it doesn't make any sense. And he might be the best playoff offensive problem solver in the NBA. It's like him and Jokic. We've seen over and over again, he's overachieved in every playoffs he's ever been to. As a second-year player, he pushed the Kawhi PG Clippers to 6 games with a banged up Kristaps Porzingis in a series people thought would be over in 4, probably, or 5. The next year, he pushed them to 7, similarly way overmatched. Then he goes to the conference finals, rips the heart out of that Phoenix Suns team that they have never recovered from still, even after trading for Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. It's just been a downward spiral since that game against Luka and the Mavs. And then goes to the finals in a year where they were a 4 or 5 seed and no one thought they were gonna, make it that far either. And I don't know. The Laker mystique strikes again. They find a way to get these stars into the building, and I'm just going to keep coming back to, we've never seen. I mean, he's the best pure player to be traded, maybe since like Kareem, because we've had some great players get traded. Shaq to the Heat, KD to the Suns, but not at the beginning of their prime. This is when
Yeah.
they're at the tail end. It never
I mean,
happens at this point.
Luka's 25. He's about to turn 26. He has been top 8 in MVP voting 5 of his first 6 years in the league. And despite the current injury, despite the conditioning concerns, and the fact that he looked way more athletic as a rookie than he does now, even though he continues to be a very special athlete in his unique way, he is fucking incredible. And he's like you said, like right after Jokic is probably the playoff boogeyman in the NBA right now. I can't help but wonder like how much does that Dallas front office hate Luka Doncic? Like
Yeah.
what could he have possibly done? I started writing down like possible reasons the Mavs do this. Like Luka has a drug problem. You know, it can't just be that Luka has spent every night of his calf injury like at a nightclub or sucking hookah. Like it has to be worse. It has to be like addiction. It has to be like they know that like he bet on an NBA game or something. Even if he swore to them, I'm going to the Lakers next summer. Like I'm gonna sit down with Shams for the world to see and tell him I want to be a Laker. And I don't care if the NBA sues me $5 million for tampering. Like I'm going to the Lakers and there's nothing you can do about it. Even then, like you still have to spend as much time as you can as Dallas like scouring the league for every blue chip offer every single team has.
They sold their franchise in 48 hours. The 48 hours. They go to the Lakers, they say, "You want
Yeah.
Luka?" And then they're like, let's think about it. And then he's
And by
gone.
the way, Sam Presti owns a 2028 Mavs pick swap when AD will be 35 and Kyrie will be 36. And call me cynical, I think there's there's a very small chance that both AD and Kyrie are on the Mavs in 2028 anyway. Even if they
Kyrie,
stay even if they stay healthy in 2028, it's just unlikely that AD and Kyrie will be holding down a contending franchise. Um,
Kyrie has a player option at the end of this year. He can opt out at the end of this year.
and then they also have. I mean, we don't really need to worry about like who else is on the rosters. Like that's a separate part of this conversation. It's interesting. Like I guess an AD lively front court with three shooters around them who can defend could be the best defense in the world, and it's interesting. Let's talk about the Luka side of things. A
Yeah.
lot of a big piece of this is getting traded for Luka means he's no longer a one team guy. He's not with the team that drafted him. So he's no longer eligible for the Supermax. He loses $115 million as a result. He could have made like three something. Now he's making low twos for his next deal. So he'll probably do a 2+1 with the Lakers, third-year player option. And after that, sign a longer deal and he'll recoup a lot of that money. The other news is that Luka had no idea this news was coming.
Yeah.
But that just means he didn't know that he was getting traded this week. He obviously knew that the relationship was frayed, and obviously there had been some amount of communication, direct or indirect, leading the Mavs to believe that Luka was 100% out, and they needed to do something about it as soon as possible.
Um, yeah. Also, just seeing tweets now, Luka gave no indication that he wanted out or wouldn't sign an extension moving forward. Like all of the intel is just this is a Mavs decision. They opted
Yeah,
out of the Luka business. It's nothing from Luka's end. I bet, maybe they made threats to him in the past of like, keep doing this and we'll trade you. And he thought they were like empty threats and then they weren't. But yeah, I mean, and if you're the Lakers, is there a better recruiting pitch for free agents? They're going to get every buyout guy. You get to
yeah,
go play off Luka Doncic and shoot your career high from three and live in Los Angeles for the next 10 years. Like we'll get to like the basketball of it all. And Luka and LeBron is like kind of a weird fit, but also like it kind of makes me excited or definitely makes me excited. But the Lakers have set contention with LeBron aside, they've set themselves up for the next decade. They have a top five player at worst, and the basketball, work environment that everyone wants to go to when they're good. And I don't know how it happened. And they're going to have the best recruiting pitch in the NBA for the next decade, pretty much. It's insane.
yeah,
Do you want to talk about the basketball, or do you have anything else
yeah.
about sort of the
Well,
meaning?
there's no version of the Lakers right now that works.
Yeah.
There just isn't. You can romanticize, like, can LeBron can't play the five. It's that, he can barely play the defensive three right now. He's still 6'9", 250, and somehow an elite athlete at 40. So like he can fit in defensively. We saw it in Paris. LeBron, when he needs to guard, if his body is just remotely okay, LeBron will be able to defend at a reasonable level. I believe that in the most
Yeah.
important moments. In the regular season, it's been really bad. But yeah, we can't put out lineups right now where like Luka is the defensive four and LeBron is the defensive five. You need a real center, and it's not going to be Jackson Hayes.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're gonna have to make multiple deals now to round out an actual playoff roster.
Well, the good thing for them is they didn't give up all their first round picks in the Luka Doncic trade because now they can trade one of their first round picks for like, Robert
Yeah,
Williams or another rim protecting center out there. And there's been intel already that they're aggressively canvassing the league for an athletic rim running big. And no one's ever made those types of players look better than Luka Doncic. And
yeah,
it like look at Daniel Gafford when he went to the Mavs. He looked like a top 10 center in the league at times.
yeah,
And yeah, honestly, the more I think about it, it kind of reminds me of the Kawhi to Toronto trade, except if you also had the expectation that Kawhi was probably going to stay there. They had this team which they knew was like probably second round ceiling. Maybe they could make some tweaks where they'd have an outside chance at a conference finals. But bottom line is LeBron and AD at this point in their careers, they're still great. Like they're still capable of winning any playoff series individually, but they're not reliable enough and like young enough and energetic enough that you can expect them to carry a subpar team or any team through four rounds of the playoffs to a championship. This current team had 0% chance of winning an NBA championship. Maybe they could have made a tweak that would have bumped that up to 1%. But you bring in Luka, who is now clearly the best player on the team. As great as Anthony Davis was with the Lakers, the idea was he would take that best player torch mantle from LeBron, and he just never did it. And that's partially because LeBron was better for way longer than anyone expected, but also Anthony Davis never rose to that level outside of the bubble run of being like a top 3 to 4 player in the league. Luka
yeah,
is that guy. It's the first time in LeBron's career where he's clearly the second best player on his own team. And yeah, it's probably not a trade for now in that this team as it is, as you said, makes no sense. But also they still have assets that they can go out and get an athletic rim running center. It probably, the Reeves Luka fit is interesting as well. It probably makes it more likely that Reeves gets traded down the line because that like you just have two guys who are that bad on the defensive end and the
yeah,
backcourt is probably not tenable, although they're so good offensively. But if you have to trade Reeves down the line, he's got a lot of value. Like you can get some real stuff for him, especially on his contract. And as it is, you can go trade a first round pick for, Robert Williams or some center out there where you're trotting out Reeves, Luka, Dorian Finney-Smith, LeBron, and Robert Williams. Like I wouldn't want to see that team in a playoff series or whatever center you put in there. And it's a trade for now and later. They knew this core now was not good enough. They bring in this high variance swing where maybe it elevates you to being a championship team now if you can make the right tweaks around it. And if not, you're still set up for the next decade having him on your team in the sort of post LeBron era. And it may even extend LeBron's career if he stays there beyond how ludicrously it's already been extended because Luka's going to handle all the usage. LeBron can be an off-ball guy. He's shown in the past few years that he's gotten a lot more comfortable as a cutter, playing off the ball, playing out of the post, all that. Luka's going to handle the heavy load, the heavy like ball handling usage, all of that. And LeBron's going to be able to contain his legs. He's not going to have to go out and put on the Superman cape every few games to drag the Lakers to wins. And I don't know. It's got potential to sort of like, re-spark his, not that it needed to be re-sparked, but like re-spark his basketball love even more and potentially extend his career a couple years beyond where it was going to be if he thinks he has a legitimate shot at getting a fifth title. And when you have a guy in Luka who's dragged teams that had no business being in the conference finals to the conference finals, a team last year that was severely outmatched in the finals, dragging them all the way to the finals, and now you give him LeBron and potentially some like decent role players around him, and the city of Los Angeles, which as I said is going to get every like free agent who's sitting on the fence of where they want to go, every buyout guy. This is a move you make 110 times out of 100. Like it's
Yeah.
we're never going to understand it. But yeah, that's sort of the basketball side for
Yeah.
LA. I don't know if you have anything else on them. We can talk about Dallas too.
You mentioned Kareem earlier, young Kareem trade being like one of the only trade reference points your mind can possibly go to when it comes to a player of this level. It's a little bit like 1979, Kareem in his late 30s, and the Lakers draft Magic Johnson. And Kareem, as the number two guy, is still more than able to contribute to titles. And Luka has an opportunity here to extend the dynasty of LeBron, which is wild. And like you said, LeBron has become way better the last couple of years, way more willing to defer. He's been deferring to Reeves. He understands his limitations. Like you said, in MSG last night, incredible. He was the best player on the floor at 40 years old. He's mic'd up yelling, "This is 40," telling JJ Redick he woke up from an afternoon nap and felt a second wind. And now he's the best player again at the Knicks in MSG, looking like the best athlete, like sprinting past Josh Hart and OG Anunoby on fast breaks, like just ridiculous shit. But he can't do it every night, and he can't do it minute to minute. And he's got to save up for the playoffs. And is there a guy you'd rather have over Luka Doncic to like save your legs for the playoffs? I'm not sure. Luka maybe even more than Jokic is probably number one, but like
Yeah.
Jokic passes more and quicker than Luka. Like Luka's willing to just take the ball for a shot clock and eat possessions for you. Like Luka is the ultimate innings eater on offense, and obviously like efficient while he does it. So yeah, it's just an incredible thing for LeBron. And you mentioned like AD as a Laker. AD was incredible in 2020. It was exactly what LeBron needed at that stage of LeBron's career, like mid 30s, when he could still be the number one guy and take on all the greatest challenges on offense. But LeBron in 2025 actually needs to be the sidekick to have a chance of going all the way. And AD offensively, that it just isn't in the cards for him. And that's okay. Like AD's been a top 10 player in the league this year. He's challenging Wemby for defensive player of the year. He's been incredible, but he's no longer the archetype that LeBron needs next to him to have a chance of getting ring number 5. And Luka is.
Yeah.
And for anyone wondering, like, is there going to be like a clash of egos? Like, who knows? Of course, like these are two of the biggest egos in the history of basketball. Like crazier things have gone wrong. I'm going to bet on two of the craziest genius artists to ever touch a basketball court, like figuring it out and having a lot of fun. Like you said, everyone except LeBron isn't safe. I personally would never trade the Reeves contract because I don't know how you're going to trade the Reeves contract and get a better contract in return,
Yeah.
even if he's a little bit redundant. But we've seen in the playoffs time and time again, like you just can't have too many competent, savvy ball handlers who are comfortable in high pressure moments. And Reeves has been awesome as like a second, third option for the Lakers this year. He's only going to become more efficient and more dangerous. And also, if Luka's conditioning isn't great, fine. Reeves can be your point guard for large chunks of games now. Like he's improved so much. He's taken a massive step this year. Again, obviously you need to trade good things to get good things in return, but I would do everything I could to hold on to that magnificent Reeves deal and just
Yep.
figure out, can we get a competent big? Can we get some depth, some 3-and-D around the edges without giving up what continues to age as one of the best deals in the league, Austin Reeves.
And whatever big man they bring in is going to look as good as he's ever looked in his career playing
Yeah.
alongside Luka and LeBron. Like,
They might not
and
be done doing business with the Mavs because the Mavs now have Gafford, AD, and Lively. And like Gafford is just absolute dial up, exactly what the Lakers need right now.
yeah,
Obviously, there are other guys around the league. Ayton makes 30 plus million. I don't think the Lakers want to put DeAndre Ayton on their payroll right now. But, there's Nick Claxton in Brooklyn, Isaiah Stewart in Detroit. Like there are these bigs who seem like they're good enough to play more minutes than they are currently playing on not so great teams. And those guys typically aren't crazy hard to find.
yeah.
Like even if the
Mitchell
Lakers,
Robinson.
Mitchell Robinson, Kelly Olynyk is getting healthy in Toronto. Like there are these capable veteran bigs all around the league that it doesn't take a lot to pluck. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad you pointed out that the Lakers didn't even trade all their first round picks, which is maybe the craziest detail of all. Like even if the Mavs didn't have the patience to go around the league and ask everyone for their best player, best asset, best draft pick, like how are you not clearing the Lakers draft shelves? It makes absolutely no sense to me. And I'm not sure it
It's
ever will. I know Nico Harrison knows like how special and rare an asset Luka Doncic is, but he
yeah.
did come out and tell Tim McMahon he believes defense wins championships, which is a really, really fucking scary quote. Like that, that makes you wonder, does he actually think that like Anthony Davis is more valuable than Luka? And like, is this more about the personnel swap than like some crazy off court Luka Doncic issue that we're going to find out about in the near future?
It seems like an extremely emotions driven decision. Like there's no basketball rationale for it. There's no business rationale for it. And that's just never a good place to be making decisions from, if just like a personal emotional place. But yeah, for Dallas, they're going all in on these two guys in Kyrie and AD who are over 30, both have histories of being either injured or unreliable. Kyrie has been really great since being traded to Dallas, but still does have a pretty extensive injury history, plus all the stuff that happened in Brooklyn. Now that it's a much more unstable situation, what's that going to look like? As I mentioned, he can opt out at the end of this year and go wherever he wants if he wants to. Anthony Davis is only under contract for a couple more years as well. Like, I just don't get the vision. And they're also going all in on like playing Anthony Davis at the four, which I know he wants to do, but like, is that the best basketball move to put him there and like potentially block minutes for your great young big and Derek Lively? I don't know. I mean, they're still going to be a good team. Like this makes them better right now while Luka Doncic is out, obviously, but they had a team that could have made the finals this year when Luka Doncic came back. And I just don't get it. Like this is like in 2019, what everyone was trying to go all in on was trading for Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis. It's 2025 now. Like we're 6 years past that. I just it's and then I also want to talk about with Dallas, like they have now a pretty extensive history of franchise level players slipping through their fingertips. And I sort of alluded to this earlier, but Steve Nash in the early 2000s, they lose for nothing because they don't think he has some back issues and they don't think he's quite the level of player that merits the level of investment they were going to need to put in to keep him. They have Dirk, who they keep for his whole career, and probably were not as successful as they should have been with him being there for 20 years. They made,
They
I
got the
guess,
ring. They got the ring.
they got the ring, but still, for as much talent as they've had, Nash, Kidd, Dirk, they lose Jalen Brunson for nothing as well. Then they bring in Kyrie. Now they lose Luka for nothing. Like it's a kind of extensive history of losing guys, MVP level guys, for nothing. Like Nash won two MVPs after he left. Luka hasn't won an MVP yet. I'm betting in his career at some point he will. Jalen Brunson may not ever win an MVP, but he's going to be top five on a lot of ballots for a lot of years. And now they've just gone in on this team, which is going to be like, a competitive first round series team for as long as they keep these guys, which I'm not super confident they're going to keep them for very long. Um,
Again,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Let's talk about the Mavs side of things because what evidence do we have since like 7 years ago that Kyrie Irving can be the number one option on a contender? I just don't believe it. And I know for a fact that offensively AD isn't leading a contender. So now we have some version of a too big front court. They're going to obviously play Lively and AD together. They're too invested in Lively, and he's already shown too much to not be like a closing player most of the time for the Mavs in the playoffs. So they're going to do like Kyrie and two other shooters with AD and Lively just shutting everything down on defense. And that's a really good team. That could be a super, like, it reminds me a little bit of like the Wolves last year, where Kyrie is kind of in that on ball Anthony Edwards role. And then you've just got like elite defensive athletes flying around him. And I totally buy it as like a competitive team that could win a round or two. But they aren't a threat to the Thunder like they were 24 hours ago. Like that's just a
No.
fact. And I wouldn't pick them to beat like Luka Doncic if you dropped him on the Wizards in a playoff series. Like that's why I'm just not worried about the Lakers short term or long term. Obviously, long term, they're like this is amazing. Like you
Yeah.
said, players want to play with Luka, unless something's going on with Luka that we don't know about. Long term, the Lakers are in better shape than they've been in years. But even short term, if you drop Luka on the worst Eastern Conference team in the league, I'm giving him a chance in a Celtics series. Like, like it's Luka Doncic. This guy like a year ago. This guy hit a step back in Rudy Gobert's face and screamed, "You can't fucking guard me," and was kind of dogging it on defense often in the playoffs last year. But it's fucking Luka. And now we're just looking at a Mavs team that looks really competitive, and has some assets, but is no longer special.
Bottom line is when you have Luka Doncic, you have a chance in any playoff series. And like this is a team that, if we're talking strictly this year, was probably going to have to be clawing its way from the play-in tournament to get into the playoffs. Maybe now they can go on a run for the sixth seed. But if they're coming out of the play-in tournament, they're no longer a team where I'm just penciling them in to win it, you know? If you have Luka, even if they were the 10 seed, I think everyone would expect, okay, they'll win their two games and they'll get in as the 8 seed. And then congratulations, Oklahoma City Thunder. You get to play Luka Doncic in the first round. Um, and I mean, and the Lakers have like built up enough winning over the course of the season that they're in a position where they can afford to have a little bit of an adjustment period. Like they can afford to go on a little 4-6
Or not,
run.
or this is a lost season. They have Luka.
Yeah, who cares? The more you think about it, the less sense it makes. Like it really, there's no rationalizing it. And
Yeah,
unless, as you say, it comes out that he's like committed some horrible crimes or something like that.
the Wolves traded Cat after making the conference finals, which was surprising, but it was Cat, and they had a complicated history with him, and Cat had been rumored in trades for a few years. Luka almost got to the mountaintop twice.
Yeah. And like I can only go off of my experience of being a Knicks fan and when they traded Porzingis and like how gutted I was after that. And he was not like a fraction of the player that Luka has already shown himself to be. And yeah, I don't know how I would recover from this if I was a Mavs fan. And yeah, the Mavs just go to being an extremely uninteresting, solid playoff team when they should have been at the beginning of like a 5-year championship contending window. And I've questioned some of the moves that Harrison has made in his time there. Like, I didn't think it was great value to send out 2 first-round picks for PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford last year, but they showed up and they played way better than I could have expected them to, in large part because you have Luka Doncic and he makes role players play the best basketball of their career. And yeah, they had Jalen Brunson and Luka Doncic, and now they have Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving. They went from, the third best player, and I don't know, Jalen Brunson's somewhere between 6 and 11 best player in the NBA for Kyrie, who's like probably in the late teens or 20s, and Anthony Davis, who's like 10th or 11th. Like, and they're both older also. They made their roster less talented and older and didn't get a ton of draft capital in the process or anything like that. And now
Yeah,
have a super crowded front court that they're going to have to figure out too.
Kyrie and AD are both great number twos, and now they're in Dallas sharing their LeBron stories.
Yep.
There's no longer a trade machine screenshot that I will shut down or ignore from you.
Yeah.
You can send me anything. NBA 2K is officially reality.
Luke is going to be back in, it seems like a week or two. Those first few Lakers games, every Lakers game is going to be must see TV. They might have a center by then. Get this team a rim protecting athletic center without giving up Reeves, and I think they can win the title this year.
Huge day for the Jalen Hood-Schifino Hive. He is
Yeah,
on his way to Utah.
I can't believe we missed this part of the trade.
Yeah,
Utah won the trade.
yeah.
I know our loyal listeners are waiting for my thoughts on Jalen Hood-Schifino. He's going to a very crowded backcourt in Utah. A lot of guys want the ball. Collier, Sexton, Keontae George. But no, that sadly was a draft pick that I missed on. He just doesn't look like an NBA player. Um,
It
but
isn't going to happen, but by far the most fun short-term outcome is AD averages 33, 14, and 3 blocks the rest of the year. The Mavs win the title. Max Christie has more off the dribble than he's even shown in recent weeks. But my God, this feels like a profound, profound failure on Dallas's part. And is a reminder that, like, in the modern era, a huge piece of your responsibility as a front office is to maintain your relationship with your blue chip Hall of Fame 25-year-old superstar. Like,
yep.
it was their job to iron out whatever they felt reached a boiling point with Luka. It's unfortunate we're never really going to know, like, what did the relationship look like behind closed doors. But even if it was as toxic can be, you still find a way to do better than this. That's all I know. And I still might rather have the Bridges deal. I think I'd rather have 5 first-round picks from the Knicks that I could then turn into a really, really good player. You know, even if you don't want to suck right away and rebuild from the ground up, you could probably get more than they did with like 5 or 6 first-round picks, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And just flip the pick somewhere. But these trades, the really good player for really good player trade are really hard to make. That's another thing, you know.
They almost never happen.
They almost never happen. This one happened, and it is a bombshell we will never forget. And I think we just need to let the dust settle a little more before we come back to it. But what a fucking bizarre 24 hours. We'll be back. Peace.
Boris Dirk.